Welcome to the show, Kirk.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
This is going to be a special one about leadership today. I think all your years in law enforcement and now transitioning into personal ventures, it's going to be a really strong experience sharing for leaders and aspiring leaders as well. And we have a tradition here in the podcast where to start with, I usually ask the guests, so share with us a bit of your origin story. So how you got into having this long career in law enforcement and now transitioning to your personal ventures as well.
Okay. So, my origin story, let's see. When I graduated high school, I joined the United States Marine Corps. I went into the reserves. I got electronics training, came back, went to work for a local defense contractor a few years. I got activated, went back active duty in the Marine Corps, and went to Desert Storm, Desert Shield, Desert Storm. They flew me over, and I was part of an artillery team that marched across the desert for about 6 months. When I came back, I was bored out of my mind, and even before I'd left, I was trying to go active duty the whole time, and I kept running across the barrier of, no, you signed a reserve contract. If you want to go active, you should have signed an active duty contract, and we don't have space for you active duty because your job is full. Okay, so I came back. I'm still trying to go active duty. I'm bored out of my mind working in an electronics lab, testing and troubleshooting pieces of equipment. And again, tried to go active duty, couldn't do it. So I joined the Fort Worth Police Department. Ended up signed on in 92. I spent early career in patrol, rose up through the ranks after about 10, 12 years, started rising up. As a lieutenant, I ended up, and I got my bachelor's along the way, but as a lieutenant, I ended up, I went to a school, and that prompted me to further my education. And that school was a semester of master's work in criminal justice. So I came back, got the criminal justice degree because it was low-hanging fruit. But then I jumped into a master's program, an MBA, Master's of Business Administration. A friend of mine recruited me into that, and along the way, he told me, he said he really put into me the value of networking. He said, you got to start networking. As a police officer, my core group was pretty small. I hung out with the guys on my team, didn't have a lot of friends outside of law enforcement other than whoever I was dating at the time, whatever their boyfriends or husbands, their friends, boyfriends and husbands, the girls that were the ones who managed the relationships. It was pretty typical. So I started doing this, and I get this MBA, and it really, and I'll tell you the value of an MBA for me, was it gave me a new lens. Okay. So being a police officer, a law enforcement practitioner, there's an old saying, if you've got a hammer, if that's all you got, the whole world is a nail. You're looking for nails. Okay. But if you give me more tools, now I can start looking for different applications. So anyway, I end up going to business school. And while I'm in business school, I end up in this position. I intentionally moved into a position called the Special Assignment Lieutenant. And basically, it was working for the captain and doing whatever stuff he wanted done as the chore boy, Well, this captain, he didn't like going to public meetings. So he sent me. And I kept hearing this refrain over and over again. I'm working in the bad part of town. And things like, why is the last grocery store just left this area? And now the nearest grocery store is 4 miles away. And that's not bad if you have a car. But if you don't have a car and it's 106 degrees out, what is that, like 38, 40 degrees for you across the pond? But nonetheless, it's hot. It's hot. So that makes it a lot more difficult. And so I started looking into this stuff, and ultimately I just basically broke it down. Why can't we have good things? Well, because they don't have the jobs to support the economy for that. Well, why don't they? Well, they don't have the education. Well, why don't they have the education? Well, they usually failed out of school. And well, why is that? Well, and ultimately, all these whys back, it comes to crisis in the home and crisis in the individual. Okay. So what are we doing about that? Well, it turns out we've got, as it turns out, in my county at the time, we had over 7,500 nonprofit agencies working. Now it's over 15,000, but back then, this is 10 years ago, there's over 7,500, but nobody talks, and everybody competes for donor dollars. And there's no collaboration. So I came up with this idea. I ran it past my boss. He said, go with it. 6 months later, I had a full-time position. And what I was doing was I partnered the police department with social services, education, the high school, the community college, the four-year college. So social services, education, employment services, mental health services, the local hospital, the food bank, all the major players. And instead of everybody being siloed, I said, what if we go into one apartment complex? You got population density there. Let's look at one piece of geography. Let's survey all the residents that we can, identify all their needs, and then let's bring a tailored prescription of services, all the stuff you guys provide, based on what that family needs. And let's see, and if we do that, the question is, can we stabilize that family? Can we get the adults job training, a short certification, truck driver, welder, forklift operator, and then can we get them living wage jobs instead of working 2 jobs at a fast food restaurant or Grubhub or whatever, Uber Eats, Uber? What if we got them legitimate 40-hour a week plus overtime plus benefits jobs? What does that do to crime? What does that do to median income for that area? What does that do for economic development? What does that do for elementary school test scores? Because if mom and dad aren't stressed out, Junior's not as stressed out. And Junior has more opportunity to concentrate, especially if he got breakfast that morning from a happy family. So I did this, and in the process, I learned people are hungry to collaborate and work on things that are larger than themselves and larger than their own entity. And in doing so, you and me, we may have nonprofits with limited scope, but if we work together, now we can expand our scope and we can bring in more donor dollars, especially if I have a research unit like the local university that's tracking this thing and helping us with it and measuring response. You look at the crime issue. Okay, there's a low-income apartment complex. If now 41% in my city, 41% of all aggravated violent crimes, meaning a weapon was used or someone was seriously injured, 41% happen in the home. Now, we can't put a cop in every bedroom, but that doesn't happen in a vacuum. So my idea was, if we can hit on some of those things, we're not going to hit them all, but let's say there's 8 points. Okay, there's you got the wage issue, you got drug and alcohol dependencies, you got the issues that they dealt with as a child themselves that they just haven't fully processed. Boom, 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 all of this stuff. What if we took 1 or 2 away and that reduced domestic violence by, I don't know, I'm just going to make up a number. Let's say it reduced it by 6%. That don't sound like a lot, but it sure does matter to the woman who didn't get beat up that night. And so this is where we went with it. But along the way, I saw here's opportunities for leadership because people are hungry to be led into things that are larger than themselves. So that was my first, foray there. So fast forward, and I promoted, I moved on, I did different things, and so I joined the Rotary Club as a part of this. I don't know if you're familiar with Rotary; they're a worldwide organization. So I ended up getting invited into Rotary. A year and a half later, Rotary sends me to Thailand for a peace fellowship. I did a semester of master's work at Chulalongkorn University in peace studies. Was able to take that home, take those lessons learned, translate that into how do we apply that to inner city conflict. And so it was this crazy, great ride. So I moved out of that. I ended up over traffic. Then finally, I was over tactical investigations, narcotics, gang, vice, the hardcore stuff. I was the captain over that unit. Ran a division of about 120 people or so doing that type of work. But as I got closer to retirement, I was like, well, okay, what am I going to do in retirement? Because I'm darn sure I'm not sitting still. If you sit still, when you stop moving, you start rusting. I met this guy. He's kind of a local celebrity. He was a World War II veteran in the Pacific Theater. And this guy's 101 years old. Saw him talk like, I don't know, maybe a month ago. Guy's name is Don Graves. And he's speaking to this group of people, and someone says, how is it at 101 you're out here still singing? He sings God Bless America. He's a very patriotic guy. How are you doing this at 101? And he says, several years ago, somebody told me, if you stop moving, you stop moving. So don't stop moving. It's really that simple. One foot in front of the other, got to keep going. The average lifespan of a cop post-retirement, when I came on, was 5 years. Okay, think about that, 5 years. Now it's about 7 to 8 years, but even that's a scary number. And I think one of the drivers of that is, well, okay, we eat like trash, we work crappy hours, got a bunch of adrenaline rush and a whole, bunch of boredom and then a flash of adrenaline rush. They say it's 99% boredom, 1% sheer terror. That's law enforcement for you. But then we've got this social network, and then and now we leave it and go sit by yourself, and you lose your purpose. So a year and a half ago, I hired an executive coach, and this guy, we worked through some exercises, and it landed on let's do security consulting when I retire. I tried that. I started up a business. My LinkedIn profile's still there. That's coming down soon. It's switching over to the Keynote. But I did that for 9 months, and I realized, I don't want to do this. This does not jazz me. This is a job, and I'm not interested in a job. I'm interested in doing something that I have a passion for. And so in that, I landed on, I have a passion for leadership. I have a passion for teaching. Those two things. I am teaching leadership now. So that's my origin story. Quite long, but there you go.
I appreciate speaking long because you touch on many points that seem to go forgotten. Because, that leadership that you say you love, you also practice it deeply. Because you took a lot of leadership guts to look at the problem at the societal level, understand the moving pieces that were at the core, so the root cause analysis that you went through, and actually move people into action to see them through.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is it's so exciting. I mean, think about that though. If you can change someone's trajectory, and by proxy change literally their family lineage and the trajectory of that out of poverty into actual success and striving and goals and back into the I know you're on the other side of the world, but the American dream for us is, what we call it, we're the land of opportunity, being able to go after that instead of sitting around waiting on a government benefit. How crazy is that? And that's what drives me.
Yeah, there's different kinds of leadership, because it's their kind of leadership that, it's just charismatic, can bring people along
Sure.
to whatever they want.
Absolutely. But it doesn't matter which, you can be servant leadership, you lead from the front, you lead from the rear, whatever. But one trait in common with leaders is the people that are following them are sold on that dream of what if we get that synergy. And we haven't touched on this, but I know I've been on teams before that, man, when we were going, it was so in sync, and everyone was like, we're almost thinking as one. It's a total group think situation. You've been on teams like that?
Yes, I've been fortunate to be in a team like that.
And how does that happen? Because you got someone who kind of assembled the pieces there and got this thing moving and got that synergy flowing. And when you're part of that, it's now 1 + 1 = 3, 4, or even 5.
Yep, that's exactly it. That's the power that a strong leader can bring to, the individuals, because it's not just achieving a goal collectively, it's actually giving purpose to those individuals involved.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And being a part of something larger than yourself is one of the greatest things that a person could do. Find something positive, get involved with it. I don't care if it's being a little league coach. Okay, fine. You're impacting these kids, or leading a large organization, as long as you're in no matter whether it's the low level or the high level, as long as you are doing it ethically. And as long as your moral compass is set properly, and you are taking care of the mission, your people, and yourself. I have a whole story behind mission, men, me, in that order. You take care of your mission, you take care of your people, you take care of yourself. Because you got to do self-care.
Yeah, if you don't have the energy, the capacity, you can never get to others.
Exactly. So you've got to keep, work out, eat healthy, keep, read, grow, learn, etc. So you can impart further lessons to your people. But that's the last of the 3 steps. Number 1, you got to take care of the mission, because that mission needs to be a big goal that is going to be a positive thing for all parties involved. Okay.
Yes.
And then you take care of your people, because those people are the ones who are going to fulfill on that goal.
Yep.
Then you take care of you. And then that is a very typical Marine Corps thing. That's where I learned it. There's a guy named Simon Sinek. He's a leadership guru. You've heard of him.
Yes.
He's got a book called Leaders Eat Last. And that's a Marine Corps philosophy. That is the private eats first, then the corporals and the sergeants, and all the way up through the enlisted, and then the officers eat in lowest to highest order. The general or the colonel, whoever's at the top of that rung, that's the person who eats last, because they're making sure everyone else gets fed first. And if someone's going to go out without a meal, it's that person. We got to make sure that the lowest line of troops get taken care of first and foremost, because they're the ones that are actually putting the boots on the ground, literally in the military sense. But in corporate sense, they're the ones that are actually driving, making the product, driving the sales, and making the money for the business.
For the sake of clarity, I'd like to hear how you define a leader. So we've gone through traits. How do you define a leader by itself?
Okay, a leader, first of all, the standard The standard definition essentially is a leader is someone, and this sounds very shallow, a leader is someone who can motivate other people to do the things that the leader needs done. Okay,
Yes.
fine. That's a very base definition. But a leader is also someone who challenges and encourages and motivates other people to become better versions of themselves. That's the more important version. Too many times you see people in supervisory positions and, oh, you're a supervisor. Okay, you're in a leadership role. Okay. And then they teach the people, their direct reports, I'm going to make sure you know how to do your job, but I don't want you to learn how to do my job, because if you learn how to do my job, you might take my place. Well, guess what? I got news for everyone who thinks that way. One day, someone is going to take your place. Whether it's sooner or later, it could be, I could walk off the curb tomorrow and get hit by a bus. Okay. I pray that it doesn't happen, but that is always a possibility. Or I may find a better position and move on or retire. But ultimately, everyone's position is temporary. I mean, it could be 10 years temporary or 2 weeks temporary. So we don't know that. And if you really care for your business and care for your company and you care, or your organization, or whatever it is that you're in that leadership position in, I say to you, teach your direct reports how to do your job, and then teach them how to do it better, or not just teach them, but push them to learn how to do it better than you do it. And then listen to them, because they will make you better. If this is also a very common thing in leadership, and it resonates so true. If there's a problem, if my boss comes to me with a problem, I own it. Okay, I take responsibility for that, even if one of my 3 or 4 down the rung is the one who actually is responsible for it. I'm responsible. I own it. The buck stops here. However, if it's a problem, it's mine. If it's praise, man, you did a good job. Man, driver, you did a fantastic job on this. No, my team did a good job. My team is the ones who made this happen. You see how that works?
Yeah.
Praise belongs to your people. Any problems belong to you. That's, some people are like, oh my gosh, well then how are you? The boss is going to think, no, the boss is going to understand that you're humble and you accept the problem, but the praise you're pushing when you push it down to your people, what does that do for them? Makes them stand up a little bit straighter and want to do even more for the organization. So that's leadership. Again, it's not just getting other people to do what you want them to do. It's getting them motivated to actually take the action to become better versions of themselves and to achieve a greater potential in them. Maybe oftentimes a potential they didn't see in themselves.
I think that definitely resonates with the experience of the best team I have ever worked on. Because for one, at the time we were consuming quite a bit of motivational content. So some people like David Goggins as well.
Well, I love Goggins, but Goggins is that self flagellation.
Kept you focused on the self.
Oh, I suck, so I got to beat myself up and get better. Okay, that's one type of motivation.
But that was one important thing there that we captured, and it really helped us a lot, which was the ownership. So it wasn't just Goggins. Goggins gave us the energy.
Him and Jocko.
And Jocko gave us that ownership.
Extreme ownership, absolutely.
It was always, okay, something went wrong, good. What's next?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad it went wrong, because now we can learn from it. It's better that it went wrong here before it got further down the road and it got wrong and it's a lot more critical.
Yeah, and it's exactly as you were saying, that ownership at individual level, not at the team level. Each person on the pot, if you will.
Yeah.
If something went wrong, any one of us could step up and either own their own responsibilities or be, to an extent, humble enough to reach out to help to the rest of the colleagues in the team.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in what I teach with the zero gray leadership. So that's my brand, zero gray. It is removing those gray areas, that ambiguity. Let's get serious and focused about what we're doing here, and what you're talking about, defining that standard. Okay, specifically, if it ain't defined, then people ain't going to do it. Okay, making it observable. Okay, communicating without ambiguity. Clear communications, not, well, you figure it out. It's like, there's a difference in staying out of people's ways or versus micromanagement. Okay, it's one thing to micromanage someone. Okay, this micromanagement, my boss is in my business telling me how to do it. Oh, you didn't do it this way. I always do it this way. You need to do it this way. No, it's not. But it's not about a free-for-all. On the other extent, it's, if I give you, here's the lanes, here's what I want done. Here's the lanes you need to stay in. Don't deviate outside of these lines. Now you go handle it. Take care of it. There's an old, it's an old story about, like, I think it's West Point or something, where in an examination, it's one question. It's, okay, so you have a platoon of men, lieutenant. You're a new lieutenant, and everyone coming out of West Point, for the most part, they're engineers. Okay, so engineer brain, and the exercise is, you have to erect a flagpole in front of the general's office, and it's 30 feet tall. Now, how do you do it? And so the engineer mind, the typical answer is, well, if it's 30 feet tall, it needs to be at least half as deep. So 15 feet under, it has to be 45 feet. They do all these calculations. Then I'm going to do this and I'm going to dig this all. No, that is not the answer. And the answer is this. I'm going to reach out to my senior sergeant in that platoon and I'm going to say, Sergeant, I need you to put a flagpole up. It needs to be 30 feet tall. So make sure it's 45 feet total length. I want it painted silver, and get your crew together and get that done. Let me know when it's done. Do you understand the mission? Now, what did we just do?
Clarity.
I gave clarity, but I also delegated to where it needs to go. Because if I'm the lieutenant and I'm, okay, men, gather around, we're going to do this. And okay, you dig, you get the pole, you guys lift it, you guys get the paint. I own that project.
Yeah.
Okay. But if I give it to that sergeant and I give him the parameters and I stay out of his way, come back and check every now and then, hey, you have any questions? How's it going? Would you need anything else to complete this task? Okay, so occasionally, but not. I don't like the way you're digging that hole. No, it's what do you need to make sure that we're within our parameters. Now that sergeant owns that project, and every time he drives by there with his family on his way to and from the front gate, and he passes the general's office. See that flagpole? My team and I put that up. And I guarantee you, if the paint starts to fade or starts a little bit of rust gets on it, guess who's going to be the first to notice? That sergeant. Why? Because he has pride in his work product. Because you gave it to him to make it happen. And that's the power of delegating as a leader, setting those parameters, clear communication. Delegate properly, but stay out of their way and let them surprise you with how much they can do and how much they care.
Nowadays we are dealing with, this concept of quiet quitting. People start to
Yep.
go back in their chair most days. They don't have that ownership of the work. They're not that motivated. They don't care if the flagpole starts to rust. What do you feel is the thing missing the most that's driving that quiet quitting behavior?
I'm glad you asked that. So I was earlier today, I was looking and there's a Gallup poll out. Gallup's a big polling organization in the United States, elections and all kinds of business stuff. 62% of the employees out there are disengaged to some extent. 62%. 17% are actively disengaged, meaning I'm just coming for a paycheck and I'm going to goof off all day. And when they figure out that I'm not working, that's fine if they fire me. Or I'm going to go off and, run my side hustle from my desk, instead of doing their regular job. So 62%. And in this Gallup poll, that was in an article called Anemic Employee Engagement Points to Leadership Challenges. Imagine that. So, among the 12 items collectively measured, Gallup found in 2025, as Q2, that 47% of employees strongly agree they know what's expected of them at work. 31% says someone at work encourages their development. Only 32% feel connected to their organization. And 28% says their opinion counts. What are we saying with that? We're saying it's a lack of communication. That's the biggest driver. So there's four things in that article they talked about. Why are employees attached? Well, organizational culture, that sense of belonging, values, etc. The number two reason they give is leadership transparency. That's communication, employment stability, strategic vision, visibility, and involvement. Their bosses are not there. Their bosses are not with them explaining, here's how our company is doing this, and here's why it's important we do this. The bosses are not giving the employees purpose. And on the other side of that, they're not giving them accountability. I've worked in an organization that we're a civil service organization. There's upsides to that and the downsides. And one of the downsides is every 6 months we get an employee evaluation. Our pay isn't affected by that. Promotions aren't affected by that. Okay, a bad evaluation probably keep you out of a specialized unit, but if you don't care about that, where's the incentive? Okay,
Yeah,
and
no consequences.
so because of that, the evaluations, it's like the boss. Okay, yeah, he's almost all of them are okay. It's on a 1 to 5 scale. Everyone's getting 4s and 5s on everything. Well, if everyone's above average, doesn't that make everyone average?
Yes.
I mean, and it's a logical thing. So that being said, there's a systemic issue that creates an opportunity for ambiguity.
It's always the incentives.
It's about clear communication. Okay. And it's about bosses caring enough to say, okay, the team is doing this, but you're holding us back. How can we help you get on board with this? But at the same time, that can't be arbitrary. Okay. We can't say, well, I don't like this guy's personality, so I'm gonna hammer him on a minor violation, whereas someone else can commit more flagrant violations, but they're really cool, or they're bringing in a lot more profit. I'm going to look the other way. That you have to enforce consistently, because what you tolerate in your organization that very quickly becomes your culture.
Yes.
If your sales team's out partying and womanizing and, hanging out in the bars all night and doing all kinds of crazy, and you're the boss and you know this, what's that say for your culture? Yeah, but they bring in good money. Yeah, but is that the image you want to show? I mean, is that the crowd you're trying to attract? And then I think most people, if they had an honest accounting, if you will, would say, no, that's not what we want. But therein is one of the biggest issues. It's as a supervisor or as a corporate owner or as a corporate president, CEO, am I willing to get rid of a top producer because his ethics are askew? I mean, this guy's bringing in good money. Am I willing to absorb that hit to ensure that my values stay intact? And that's up to the individual to decide. Where do I want to go with my company? I choose the side of, okay, fine, yeah, he's a great producer. You know what? I can find a great producer who doesn't sleep with the client's wife or who doesn't get drunk at the convention and chew out the CFO.
Yeah.
You see what I'm getting at? Enforcing those standards.
We're getting to that territory of the moral compass of the leader.
Absolutely. The moral compass is imperative. Before you can lead anyone else, you have to have your own moral compass set. And when I say set, I'm talking actually run the exercises in your head. Years ago, I took martial arts. I was in American karate and taekwondo for, I don't know, 7-8 years. I made it to second degree black belt. And I really enjoyed it. And one of my favorite drills was this thing called 3-step exercises. We'd do a 1-step or a 3-step exercise. And the way it went is two people would, be apart. They'd bow to each other. And then this guy moves forward, strike and stop. So he'd, throw a punch and stop. Okay. And the other guy, this guy, he would execute his first 3 moves in a counter. So I punch my right hand, you're opposite me. You may block to the outside and then strike forward, maybe an elbow, maybe a knee strike, whatever you're going to do. And then we do it again and bow, and then you do it, and then I do mine, and then we bow, and then you do, So what happens is you're preloading, you're pre-programming your first 3 steps. So when the punch comes,
know exactly what to do.
You have one decision to make. Am I going inside or outside? If I go inside, it's this 3 moves. If I'm going outside, it's these 3 moves. Okay. And when you're executing those moves, now because it's on autopilot, I have the breathing space in my head of that 2 seconds or so to evaluate and to determine what my next sequence of events is going to be. I position that it's the same with your moral compass. Walk yourself through those exercises. What if a subordinate came on to me and she was really good looking and I'm single? I know I'm not supposed to fraternize in the company, but how do I handle that? Well, you know what? You better have your speech ready. That, you better have your response ready. She's like, hey, what's up? It's like, boom. That's the 3-step drill. When she counters, boom, that's move 2. It's like, why? Because those things are going to happen. And if you fall to that, guess what? Okay, yeah, you start seeing each other on the side for 2-3 months, and then, oh, wow, it didn't go right. And guess what? She's in HR talking about all this craziness that you slept with her and you promised her all this stuff. Or vice versa, ladies out there listening, But my point is all those things, what happens if if you get an opportunity to embezzle from the company, oh man, no one will know. Or you find out someone else is doing it. What are you going to do? That's why it's important to have those 3-step drills already embedded in your brain. You go through all of those situations that could happen. Just brainstorm those. What am I going to do about this? What am I going to do if my boss offers me a promotion if I fudge some numbers? And that's up to the individual to it's up to you to determine what am I going to do on this. But that's what I mean by set your moral compass. Because those situations are going to arise. And when they do, if you don't have an answer for it, one will be provided. And it's probably not the one you want.
I love that you're touching on the importance of the fundamentals, because not only are you front loading how you want to behave when you're cold, you want to prepare how you're going to behave when you're hot, because in those moments it's the most vulnerable that you are, because it's that fight or flight reaction you don't think through.
Right.
How can you actually, how can you put in more reps more frequently? So shorten the time span that you put in sufficient reps so that your 3-step reaction is instinctual.
Get a buddy. Practice on each other. You're okay. I was blessed when I was a sergeant. I'm working in the jail, and I had a boss who was unscrupulous. Let's just leave it there. And my co-sergeant and I, and we were the supervisors when the officers came in with the paperwork. We would review it, make sure that everything is, everything needed for an arrest is there, and it's a legal arrest before it went to the judges. So I had a very honorable, very ethically sound co-sergeant, and we would talk about these situations together. And as they say, iron sharpens iron. You've heard this before.
Yes, sir.
Iron sharpens iron. Okay. Well, get with some like-minded peers, and while you're at lunch, hey, you know what? I've been thinking about this, and what happens if someone asks this? What would you say? And that's how you start the conversation. It's like, okay, what else could go wrong around here? What if we got a piece of, if you're a code writer, what do you do?
Yeah, I work in IT.
You're an IT guy. We know this piece of code is flawed, but it works most of the time. Technically, we shouldn't pass it and let it go out, but man, we're hitting a deadline. I say we throw it out there, and we know that it's going to end up on a recall. Okay, but it's going to cost us a bunch of money. Yeah, but it ain't going to be our problem. You heard that stuff before? I mean,
Many times, unfortunately.
Exactly. Is that the right thing to do?
Nope.
Okay, so what's the issue?
If
we take the gray out,
yep.
take the ambiguity out, and I say take the gray, zero gray. That's my thing, zero gray, but only in that space that you control. Obviously, outside of your control, you draw that circle. Mm-hmm. And inside the circle is everything that I can control or have some sense of control on. Everything outside I can't control. There's so much gray out there. We're not going to be able to change that. But when we control what's in here and take the gray out, it's black and white. You just said it's wrong. If it's wrong, what's the question? And I know that means that bosses are like, oh, you should have pushed it out, but it's not ready. And it's gonna mess us up in the long term. Some people aren't gonna like that. And that's where, okay, do you want us to, are we an ethical company? Because you're suggesting that we're not, boss. And I just want to be clear. If we're not, please say it out loud. And I know that's a hard conversation. And it's easy for me to say, not being in that room. When you're in that room and the boss is leaning on you like, dude, I need this out today. Well, it can't go out today in its current form. No, I need it out today. Well, I mean, what do you do? Great. Can you send that to me in an email? Because I'm going to follow up in that email with, okay, I will send it out if you wish. However, as per our discussion, this, and this are incomplete. Now we have a document, okay? Because I guarantee you, without that, when it comes down later, where's that boss going to land on that? Your team pushed this out. You think he's going to be the one to say, I knew it was wrong and I sent it anyway. I pushed the team to send it out. Is that what your boss is going to do?
Never.
No, they're not. Because a guy who's going to ask you to do something wrong is never going to be the guy who stands up and says, yep, I asked him to do something wrong. Now that's different from, okay, step outside of policy if it's the right thing to do. Okay, sometimes policy is flawed.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, and I'm not talking about, okay, it's wrong and we're going to be deceitful and we're going to do this, but it's like, well, the policy says we can't do this. You know what? I'm going to make a command decision. You do this. Okay, you understand it's outside of policy. I do understand it's outside of policy, and we're going to do this because it is better for this, for the customer or the employer, whatever, which ultimately is better for our company. Okay, see the difference?
Yes.
Okay.
Night and day.
I speak on a topic called that I referred to. Whenever I come into a new unit, or I get whenever I came in and I got a new group of reports, if you will, I would always give what they call a commander's intent speech. Now that harkens back to the military and the Marine Corps for me specifically, where when a commander came into a new unit, he would lay down the parameters that, hey, here's our objective. Here's what we're trying to achieve here. Now, yes, we have all the manuals and the training and everything you've gone through, but sometime you may find yourself outside of that. If you do these things, you're probably going to be okay. Okay? And so that's the commander's intent speech. So whenever I come into a unit, I give a commander's intent speech. And part of that speech specifically is, I believe there's two kinds of mistakes in this world. There's a mistake of the head and a mistake of the heart. Mistake of the head, my heart's in the right place. And I violated a policy trying to do the right thing because my heart's in the right place. Now, I may have knowingly violated that policy, but ultimately it was to try and do right by, for a legitimate reason.
Mm-hmm.
Someone does that, I see that as a training opportunity, possibly an opportunity to look at and potentially revise our policy. But I don't see that as, okay, the person may get scuffed up a little bit with discipline, a little letter in your file or something, but you did the right thing. Okay. Conversely, a mistake of the heart, it's wrong. You knew it was wrong. You did it usually for personal gain of some sort. I can't help you with that. We're all grown-ups here. If that's where, if you're going out here, you're embezzling from the company, or you're, off at lunch, going to the bars in the company truck or whatever, that's your business. But understand, when you're caught, you're a grown-up and you're responsible for your actions. Take your licks and move on. And I'm going to be the first guy who's going to be standing there showing you to the door, because I've got no business for that in my organization. So mistake of the head, mistake of the heart, you see the difference there. It's all about and so when we look at, we have an employee or direct report, whatever, who committed a violation, a policy violation, whatever have you, we have to step back and go, okay, why? And that may mean an interview with them. Why did you do this? Well, I have a reason. Okay, well, you were hanging out at the bar drinking, so okay, yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory. Versus you violated this policy. We always fill out this form and get approval to do this before you did it, and you took it upon yourself to do that. Yeah, because and here's why, blah blah blah. You know what? Okay, actually, that makes sense, and you did the right thing. Both of them are violations,
Completely different.
but they're exactly. And so you have to look at motive. You have to look at intent. And if the motive is self-serving, adios.
I have one last question before we wrap up, which is, it's especially aimed at those people that, maybe their leaders are not so good. They may, communication might not be great, lots of ambiguity there. And, the person themselves are trying to become a leader to their leaders.
Okay.
What would you recommend as the thing that they need to protect the most to ensure they can become a good leader to their leader?
So you're talking about leading up, and
yes, leading up.
In that, I would say if you're seeing an issue, start documenting. I noticed this on this day. This person talked to me about blah blah blah, and I see it. I see whatever this issue is. This day I see this issue, et cetera, et cetera. This day I see this issue, and then because documentation, nothing negative can come out of documentation.
Yes.
If it is accurate and true. Okay, nothing negative can come out of that. And if it could be your documentation, your email could be brought up in a open records or in a, if we get a subpoena for these documents. Well, you know what? If we're not doing anything wrong, then who cares what those emails say? You hear about, oh my gosh, these emails came out, and between this police chief and this city man, it's like, oh my gosh, or these corporate emails came out and these people were talking, but in every one of those, somebody was doing something wrong. So if you're documenting, unless you are doing wrong, and nothing's going to hurt you there, okay? So you document, you develop, okay, this isn't a one-off, this is a pattern in our organization.
Yeah.
And then you ask for a meeting with that boss and say, hey man, or hey ma'am, I'm letting you know, okay, as your employee, I want to take care of you. I want you, my supervisor, I want you to succeed. Because I want you to succeed, I am compelled, I need to point out, I've seen these things that are going to be a problem for our organization, and I'm presenting them to you because it's not at my level to, I can help you, but these are things that I really think we need to discuss and see if we can fix. See what we did here?
Yeah, document, you have nothing to lose, all to gain, remain objective, not subjective, and then.
But what are you doing with your boss? You're not presenting an indictment. You're not saying, look, here's all the things you're screwing up. It's, hey, I want to take care of you. I do. I want to protect you because I see an opportunity here for all of us to improve and get better. But there's some things here that, man, we got to address. Oh, and the boss, well, what do you got? It's like, if they blow it off, okay, great. It's up to them whether, you can hand someone, here you go, here's the reins. Now let's ride this horse and get it moving. They may choose not to. And that's okay, because You have fulfilled your obligation in leading up or attempting to. You've done it tactfully, diplomatically. You've got your documentation, and they know you have documentation. So you've already presented the issue. If something falls out later, if you get called in, I met with the boss on this day. It's on my calendar, and we discussed these things. I don't know what he or she did with them. So
No.
that's the leading up piece. And I've had opportunity many times where my boss is like, "Oh, we need to do this." Like, all right, hold on. Before we do that, I will do that. If you tell me I need to do that, I'll do that. However, understand if we do this, this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is outside policy. So do you really want me to do this?
Yeah.
But that involves having clear, transparent communication with your boss and with your peers and with your subordinates.
Starts from within, and when you do get that leadership opportunity, you utilize it.
Yep. Well, and I would challenge you, and I challenge all your listeners. When you get back to your workplace, what is the most glaring ambiguity? What is the most glaring gray area in your workspace? And I challenge you, as soon as you get back to work, you identify it and you go to work on fixing it. That's how we make it better.
Yes, sir. Challenge accepted.
All right.
Kirk, it was a pleasure. Where can people connect with you or even work with you?
Yeah, first place I'm going to turn them to is go to my website, zerogray.com, Gray, zerogray.com. On there, you can connect with me through there. You can see where I'm keynoting, but I should have a calendar up. If it's not up yet, it'll be up within the next couple days, but definitely already have my, you can contact me on that page and you can see the services we offer.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Kirk. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. I appreciate being on your show.